can't show up in other ways. So yeah, I think, but then they fade into the distance, right? They're really not a part of the rest of the series at this point.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
got their lesson and they were done.
They got their lesson. You know, they have the accomplice. They get the background. You know, they're painting the picture. And then this is where I fell in love with the series, and I had a lot of visceral reactions to the third episode.
That was a hard one.
It was really hard.
And I think at this point they're months into it. Like the first 2 episodes are the day of, and then I think either a couple of weeks or a couple of months in.
Yeah.
But the third episode is like Jamie and the family have been in this for months now.
And he is not in a prison.
No, he's in like a psych ward, essentially.
He's in like a psych ward, yeah. So he's in some type... Tom's like, this is going to be a really long episode. Are you filming yourself right now? Okay.
You should be.
You should be, because it's very funny what's happening. So he's in like a psych ward.
Yeah. Because they don't know where else to place him. It's so unprecedented that this happened.
Yeah.
That we see the cops kind of talking with one another throughout this. They're like, okay, so what happens when we book this kid? Like, where are we taking him?
Where does he go?
Literally.
Literally.
They're on the phone making phone calls. Like, so if we have to put
Right.
this kid someplace, where are we going to? Because we can't put him around adults. Because he's
You can't
13
put him
years
around
old.
adults, but he also like he's committed a murder, is accused of committing a murder, not an active psychosis, not like, doesn't seem to be having like outward mental health issues, right? So they put him in basically more of like a therapeutic, like rehabilitation type place. So he's interviewed in episode 3. He's interviewed by a female psychologist. And I'm putting female psychologists out there because it's very important, I think, to
Absolutely, their dynamics.
Yes, it's very important to the dynamic that happens. And I think what's interesting, too, is like the scene that's kind of painted is like she's coming in, she's trying to get information. The guard is trying to be like, hey, what's up, girl?
Yeah, that a creep really disliked that guy.
But I think that was, again, it's like we're throwing at the theme. The theme is here. It is coming through. Men are preying on women. She's just trying to do her fucking job. And the guard is like, what's up with you?
That's so interesting that you take it like that, too. Because there is that side of it, too, where I was like, can't you take the fucking hint guy? Like, she has zero interest in you. And he just strikes me as so desperate and lonely.
Yeah.
Like, he literally... At times you can see him like struggle, like he gets this kind of like she's not responding, like he gets this kind of like upset look on his face, like she's not responding. Yeah. And he himself, I'm like, you look like a 13-year-old boy. Like he looks so he can't get her to engage the way he wants her to.
But where he backed down, Jamie escalated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is a man that has been in these situations time and time again and has learned, if I persist, it will not benefit me. Yeah. Jamie has not learned that yet. So she comes in and she's just trying to get some like background on this kid, right? She wants to see the video. She gets him, some of his favorite things. And there's a lot of discussion too about how like he saw another psychologist and it was only this number of sessions and the other psychologist didn't ask me these questions and blah, 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 blah. I don't know if you remember that part.
I don't remember that part, but as you say it, it's just making me think, I'm assuming it's for either side of his legal counsel. The state, which I don't know what they call that in the UK, but the state, and then obviously his own. And because her whole goal is to figure out, is he criminally insane? Is there a mental health disorder here that is resulting in him taking these actions? Or is he of sane mind? And then what was his motivations for doing this? So she can testify to that.
And I think she was hired by his team.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
The public defender. So
yes, I think she was on the side of his team.
Which is just an interesting thing to note, that that's her goal throughout it, because you can kind of tell as she's the kind of question she's asking.
And from like a my true crime perspective is sometimes, because I just got done watching The Staircase. That was a repeat watch for me.
Fascinating one.
Is because I saw and then I watched another true crime thing, and like the coroner that they called in was actually called in for The Staircase.
Really?
But they didn't use his testimony because they didn't like what he said. So that this struck me as one of those of like, we hired this woman. She saw a lot of shit. Do we use her?
Yes.
Right? Is this helping his defense? I would argue probably not.
Definitely not.
So she comes in and she takes this like very much like, I'm going to be approachable. I'm going to get you food. You know, your basic like rapport building type.
I was just going to say, your classic 101. Let me build some rapport for you.
You know, I'm going to get you the stuff.
She has a sandwich with her that she has made from home and has brought for him.
Yeah.
They've met a few times at this point. She gets him a hot chocolate and brings mini marshmallows from home to add to it, like very...
Yeah, and like he says something like, oh, you know this is my favorite, or like, you know I like hot chocolate or something like that. And, you know, there's kind of like this funny, like, bantery back and forth. Tom's falling asleep. Wake up! Because we're in episode 3. And... It's kind of this bantery back and forth, but then she starts trying to ask him questions that he doesn't understand the purpose of. She starts really trying to get to like his family dynamics. Like she's asking him about like masculinity and his dad and his family and school, and he's getting so like, why is this relevant?
See, I took it as he knows exactly why she's asking, and that's
why.
Oh,
okay. What told you? Like, what tells you that?
Because when he got really dysregulated and escalated, I forget what it was exactly, but he at one point admits verbally, he goes, for the thing I did.
Oh, okay.
And that's when he gets up from his chair and he literally has a dysregulating moment where he starts grabbing his face. He pushes the chair back and he's like, never mind, never mind.
Yes.
But that's what set that off to me.
So it felt calculated to you.
And I felt like he knew that because she's asking about masculinity and his feelings about women and what has he been taught about the differences between men and women. And as he's getting so angry at her about asking about this, he goes, because you basically want to know about the thing that I did.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it does feel like, now that you're saying that and I'm thinking about it a little bit more, like he plays a part in the cat and mouse game until he gets sick of it.
Yes.
And so then he's like, okay, like, I'm not a moron. I know why you're asking me these questions. And what's really interesting, and I wrote a lot of notes on this, like I wrote how interesting it was that he seems to like ricochet between uncertain to seeking reassurance.
Oh, yes,
like,
that's his thing,
back
right?
and forth, and like he'll ricochet between uncertainty or emulating uncertainty or like imitating uncertainty to seeking reassurance to then attempting to like control and like condescend. So it's really interesting. And like, and behaviorally what I noticed was like anytime that she is not contradicting his inner thoughts, anytime that she is not, so he said like, I'm ugly, of course girls don't like me, when she did not say, of course you're not ugly.
Yeah.
Right? When she kind of was like, oh, is that what you think? Mm-hmm. When she doesn't contradict his inner thoughts, his negative inner thoughts, boom, through the roof dysregulated. Like, he's getting up out of his chair, he's knocking his chair over, he's screaming at her, he's standing over her. And I had such a visceral reaction to his dysregulated moments because I've been there. I mean, I've been in those moments, and I've been in that, like, adrenaline situation in which, like, this could go one of two ways. Either you give me space and walk away, or, like, you're about to get physical with me. And you see all of her therapeutic training, like, boom, kicking into gear, right? Like, she is neutral, like very lack of responding, just trying to be like, sit down.
I'm curious about more of your thoughts on that, because I took it as that they're doing it for the theatrics of the show. Mm-hmm. I thought she escalated him.
I think that there were points in which she escalated him, yes, for sure. I think that she did raise her voice to communicate seriousness of like, you need to sit the fuck down right now. So I do feel that was escalating, but like all of my behavioral training is like, do not respond. So
See, I didn't take her as not responding.
Flat. Her affect was so flat.
I didn't take it as flat.
Yeah, I took it as flat. I took it as very like.
I hear you taking it as flat. Yeah. I didn't take it as flat.
What did you take it as?
I took it as I could see her affront, like fear.
Yeah.
And I can't believe you're doing this right now, and you're.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason why I was so curious, because I made a note to myself, because I had wanted to ask you if you thought that she was. There were times where I thought she was intentionally maybe trying to escalate him a bit to see what his response would be psychologically, because like even there were times like when she was telling him to sit down, she wasn't calmly telling him. She was yelling back at him.
Yeah.
She was at times speaking specifically when he was like, she wasn't waiting for a break and then telling him, Jamie, I need you to sit down. Mm-hmm. She was at his rate, and it was, I got the impression of like either theatrically they're trying to build the chaos of the moment so we get a more emotional, intense response, or she literally, as the psychiatrist in that, is trying to give him a little bit more to dysregulate him just to see how far does he go. Does he dysregulate and go, fuck you, and then walk out of the room? Or does he dysregulate and punch her in the face?
Yeah, I think, I do think that there was parts of that. I do think that she was intentionally, provoking him to see if he would like pass the line. I do think that there was parts of that for sure. I also think too, like, you're so intuitive and you read body language so well that like what you interpreted as fear and stuff, like I could totally see why you would interpret it that way. I just took it as like, she just was like, we're power playing right now. I'm not going to give you a big outward response.
Yes.
I'm not going to emote outwardly except to raise my voice. And I do think that there was some provoking. I think it could have been provoking. I think it could have been poor training. I think it could have been she's not been in a lot of situations like that.
That could have been, right? They never tell us her history. Like, we don't know if this is her second case or her 40th.
I was erring more on lack of training. That she didn't understand or know. But I think that she was, to me, I interpreted it as not necessarily intentional provoking, but I think she was trying to take the power back.
Yeah.
She was trying to communicate that it doesn't matter if you're screaming and yelling and crying right now. I am not going to break my sentences and words are coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Which is something I've done before.
Right? Yeah.
So I was very much like, I've done that. I've experienced that.
And I could definitely see some scenes where she would just kind of wait for him and then
and
even walk out of the room and then come back.
Call the bluff, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get up and you're going to posture. I know you're not going to do anything, so I'm not going to change my behavior because I'm going to show you you're not intimidating me.
Yeah.
Right? So that was like, I got so much of that, and I was like, God, I had such a visceral reaction to this episode because, you know, a lot of us have been there and been in those scary situations, and I think especially at the end. So there is a moment in which I think this was a great call. She did remove herself from the room.
Yes.
Said, I'm going to go get tea or whatever. Didn't come back with anything, which I was like, if I did that, and with kids that I've worked with, they'll be like, oh, so you didn't go and get the fucking tea? Like,
yeah. Would you go cry in the corner?
Yeah. But on the other hand, I was like, well, no liquids should be in that room, period.
Especially not hot ones.
Especially not hot ones, because I used to work with kids that would be like, boop, try and get me now.
Yeah. Enjoy that cup of tea.
Oh my God. Oh, imagine if you just put all of that effort into regulating. So yeah, I mean, it was, she was very pushy. She was very much like, I'm going to press this. I'm going to get an answer out of you. It gave her a lot of information.
A lot. And I loved their back and forth, that very relational moment, because that's something that I've had. Some of my favorite sessions have been like that, with where you're probing on something, or you have a line of thought that you want to go to, and you know it's important to that client that you're working with. And as you start to probe it a little bit with them, their defenses come up and they're a little annoyed. Why are you asking the questions that you were asking the way that you were asking them? Mm-hmm. And I love how, because I think that this is the most effective, it's what I teach the therapist I supervise to do. She levels with him. I can't just outright ask you about masculinity and how it probably related to this incident. You're going to give me an answer that's very surface, and it's not going to. But if I ask you stories and I get a deeper value-based question from you
Yeah.
or answer from you about these things. We're going to get to a better understanding here. And he really understands her when she says that to him and sees the value of it too. And I loved that relational moment that she offers, where you can even see her a little frustrated too with him, and the back and forth that she gives, which is human. We do that. I'm trying to get you someplace and you're fighting me on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the cat and mouse game, and she kind of takes the veil off.
Yes.
Right. And he appreciated that she took the veil off, because he's a lot smarter than he lets on to be. Right.
He's a clever one.
He plays the 13-year-old. I don't know. I don't care.
I'm so scared.
I'm so scared. I don't like needles. Right. I couldn't have stabbed a girl 8 times.
Could never.
And I think it's it's interesting. And I think the only other point I want to make, because this is it's going to be a very long episode. There's just so much to get into.
There's a lot in here.
The other thing that I think is the reassurance seeking that you see from him is super impactful in the dynamic between him and her, because she's a woman. And he makes a comment like, of course you don't understand, you're a pretty woman. Like, you're pretty. And so so even again, like, this theme is coming into just his interactions with the psychologist, and basically being well, you're not ugly, so you couldn't understand what it's like, basically. Or like, of course I feel this way, and you don't feel this way about yourself because you're pretty and I'm ugly, right? Tell me that I'm not ugly. Yeah. And then I flip out, right? And so there was lots of power plays happening. And again, it was just this like weird dichotomy of like, he's a child and he's 13, but then there's moments where he kind of gets this like smug condescension where he's like throwing his weight around and posturing.
He's becoming a man, right?
And he's trying to intimidate her to back down or leave. And it's really like, it's scary, and your adrenaline is going watching it, right? And then it gets to the point, where she's like, I've seen everything that I need to see. This ends here.
It's very abrupt. She turns to him and she says, Jamie, this will be our last session.
So abrupt. And he's like, what the fuck are you saying to me right now? Lose it. Because again, it's like, he's like, connect. I want to connect with you, but I want to connect with you in the way that I like. I have the power.
And this is also right after he is transparent about everything. Yeah. That he did murder her, his actual true motivations as to why, which we didn't even get into, but it's because I thought this was so fascinating, which was that she had a photo of her leaked, a nude image of her leaked to her schoolmates.
Yeah. I don't know how I didn't touch on that.
And he believed that because she had been humiliated, that this would place her in a position where she would be more likely to say yes and accept him, because he thinks of himself as being so low.
Yep.
And so he says, I got my best tracksuit on, I got myself all ready to go, and I go and I ask her for a date. So this whole time, he really does have feelings for her. He really did like her. And he thought that if she felt humiliated and small and worthless,
then she
might say yes to him, because that's how little he thought of himself.
Yes.
Wow. And then after he says all of this,
write that down, buddy.
After he says all of this to her, finally, she turns to him and says, Jamie, that will be our last session.
Yep.
And I thought this was so, other than the very ending when the father tucks the teddy bear in, I thought that this part was so moving, because he does not care at all about her assessment of, do you think I'm guilty? What are you going to say to the court? He never mentions any of this. All he asks her repeatedly until the door closes is, do you like me?
Over and over again. And it's that reassurance seeking that you see throughout their whole session. Yes. You want her, he wants her so desperately to like give him value that he won't give himself.
I like you.
I like you. Tell me you like me. Tell me that I'm handsome. Tell me I'm this. Tell me I'm that. And she never gives that to him. And I think he's either so used to getting that from people or not getting it at all. That this is when you see like the biggest escalation, the guards holding him back, like he has to be escorted out. And
she just quietly leaves.
I think she quietly sits there.
Yes.
And cries. Yeah. And I wrote adrenaline dump at the end, because when I've been in the scariest situations that I've ever been in, I cry at the end because it's like this adrenaline dump where you just are like, I was just fighting my body's natural instincts to do my job right now, and now my job is done and I can be a person, and it's like the floodgates open. That was a really impactful episode for me, like just working in behavioral health, seeing his psychology, like it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Man, and it only gets worse. It only gets worse from there. You know, because then episode 4 is...
That was my favorite of them all, to be honest.
3?
No, 4.
4. Yeah, I had a feeling you would say that.
4 was it's where all the grief was.
It's where the grief lives. And I think that's the other thing that was so impactful for me about this episode was like, or these series in general, is because you don't get to live with the family as the family experiences this situation. Yeah. And so the episode 4 opens with, you know, dad is teetering. Dad is like walking on eggshells. Oh, yeah. Like everybody's walking on eggshells around Dad. It's Dad's birthday.
Yes, his 50th birthday.
It's his 50th birthday, which is, you know, such a formative birthday.
Right. So much symbolism in that.
Oh, and you know, they're trying to figure out what to do for the day, and there's this unspoken grief that's just weighing on. You can see it on their faces, right? Like everybody's on the verge of tears.
But again, nobody says anything. Which says so much about everything that got them there.
Nobody says anything. And there's this like uncertainty, there's this edge to the episode. And everybody's like, you know, waiting for the shoe to drop, right? And then Dad goes, I think, and I don't remember what kicks it off. I think it's the vandalism.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The nonce.
Yeah, so he goes out to his van, which is his work vehicle. Mm-hmm. And it's been vandalized. And again, Dad is trying to take it on the chin. He's like, it's fine. We'll you know, let me just clean it off. And they're like, it's paint. It's not going to come off, you know? And like mom's trying to help, and like daughter's trying to like stay out of the way. And then he's like trying to clean it, and
that's the other thing is mom and sister in the background are like breaking down and crying, but on their own and privately. Yeah. So, and then they'll wipe their faces as they re-enter the room with one another.
Yes.
It's a very, it just shows you that's how they deal with emotions.
Yes. And they look terrible, right? They look like they're feeling it. And, you know, the vandalism happens, and Dad is teetering, you know, like he's going to get the bucket, can't find the bucket. He's dumping the water. He's apologizing, but then he's snapping. Like it's very, you know, it's very tense in the house, and him and the wife are like, okay, like we can still make this a good day, right? Like we can recover.
They're desperately trying to make it.
We can make it okay. We can just be okay today. And so, you know, they get in the van and they're driving in the van, and you know, mom wants this one specific song. She wants the song, and the daughter's like, oh, I didn't know that you liked this. And, you know, they're kind of like sharing and like get to knowing each other in a way that it's like so obvious. Like Jamie doesn't get to see it. Jamie doesn't get to experience like knowing and learning more about his parents and their dynamic and the family time and all of that. And it was long. That was a long ride. Was long, you know, but you were living in the grief with them. Like you were living in this process.
Unspoken grief.
Oh,
that just stands, I think, because of what we do. Just the idea of nobody saying anything about this, of like, oh, I can't believe this is your birthday and we're supposed to celebrate this, and your son is in prison and likely will be for the rest of his life.
Right. And like, but it's your birthday.
So,
like, let's go to Lowe's or whatever the UK equivalent of Lowe's is, you know, and they go and, like, you know, oh, go do shopping like you always do. You're good at shopping. I'm going to go get the stuff. He goes and meets the kid, you know, some nerd kid, helps him get the stuff. And, of course, this nerd kid goes, hey, you're that guy with the son.
Notices him right away and knows the whole story.
You know, and goes, you know, I'm rooting for him. Like, I don't think he did it. You know? And so at this point, And I really liked the kind of the soundtrack audio they started to use because it was like he starts dissociating. You can feel it, that he starts dissociating. It's too much. He's shutting down. He gets the shit that he knows isn't going to clean the car. And he starts walking towards the front of the store. The daughter comes up, is talking to him, but he can't hear her. He is in his head. He's in focus. Everything else is a blur in this shot. Yeah. And it shows you like he's dissociating. And so he goes out to the car and then he sees the two kids, right?
Yes.
Right? So when the car...
Or when he's at home at least and he's painting the van, then he sees them on their bikes outside. Before
they left for the store,
okay,
he goes out to the van, sees that it's vandalized, is asking neighbors about it. Two boys ride by on their bikes,
yes,
and yelled nunts.
Yeah.
He chases a little bit and was like, "Did you do this? Did you do this?" Fast forward, now we're at the Home Depot. He has the stuff, sees the boys in the parking lot. And he goes and grabs the boy, who happens to be, I think, one of the bigger bullies at school, if I remember correctly.
I believe so,
Everybody was saying how much of an asshole this kid was. And so he, like, basically, like, I thought he was going to beat the shit out of this kid. He, like, assaults them, yeah. He assaults this kid, throws his bike, has an absolute freak out. Mind you, like, his wife, daughter, like, they're in public.
Yeah.
There's people around. He comes back to the van. And, you know, wife is like holding like a fern or whatever she's holding. And they're like, what the? I don't even think they call him on it. I don't even think they really say anything. No. Like, what was that?
I don't know if that's just the UK politeness, like that's known for, of like, you just don't say any of the.
Yeah. And then I can't remember the order of events, if he throws the paint on the van before he assaults the kid or after, but he bought blue paint because he knew he couldn't get it off and just threw paint over it.
Yeah.
Just ripped it off and just throw it. Then the security guard in the parking lot is like, well, you're going to have to clean this up. And you know, it's a whole scene.
Yep.
So dad has been teetering and dad is just like, but believe it or not, hasn't fully lost control.
No. It's almost very dream state-like because he's so focused on correcting the van. And that's what reminds me of a dream, because rationally it's like, stop focusing on this. Like, this is so dumb out of all the things. But in this dream state, like, out of all the things in his life that he can't control, he can't not fixate on getting this one fucking thing covered up with paint. Yeah. He just can't let it go.
It's the one thing he keeps coming back to. And damn it if those fucking kids aren't gonna let, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And fuck it that he's in public. I just have to get this done because I need to be able to go to work and I need to go home and I'm gonna enjoy my birthday.
Yes.
Right? So they get in the car. No one's speaking. No one's saying how
paint all over the window and
everything. He's like, get in on the other side because there's paint on this side. Yet mom and daughter have not fucking said a goddamn word. Right? And then they're driving home and Jamie calls from prison. And he calls and he doesn't say that he's in the car with them at first.
No.
Just lets him talk. And you know, Jamie sent him a card and drew a portrait of him that was actually very nice. Yeah. And you know, they're doing the small talk and whatever and dad's trying to seem normal. And
they all are. They're like asking him like, is the food any better there? And you've just been working out. You're going to be a bodybuilder by the time you get out, like trying to make small talk and jokes.
Yeah. And like reassure him. And then, Jamie confesses and says, Dad, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm going to switch my plea. I'm going to switch my plea to guilty.
Yeah. I don't even know if he says sorry. I think he even just says, like, I've decided I'm going to plead guilty.
Oh, I think I remember him saying that he was sorry because I think he said something like, I remember him saying sorry, and I remember Dad just not saying anything.
At the end of that scene, I remember that.
Okay.
When Dad is silent for a time and Mom and the sister are trying to, like, talk to Jamie, and Dad's just like, He's gone. He's just
dissociating.
I think that was the full moment when Jamie says, like, hey, I've decided I'm going to plead guilty. Like, again, like, it's no big deal. Like, he's like, hey, I decided to stay at community college this summer instead. Like, it's nothing. And you just see him. He doesn't say anything else. He's gone.
Yeah. And that's where, like, mom is like, hey, I'm here too. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize you were in the car. And so, so again, but this is like, it's the one shot, right? So he's driving. All of this conflict has happened, and then they're just in the car, and they're not speaking, and then Jamie calls, and then Jamie's like, by the way, right? And Dad just doesn't say a word. And then at the end, they say their goodbyes, and then they look at each other, and they're like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't go to the movies today. Like, let's just get takeaway. So they go back, they're going to get takeaway, right? And then they get to the house, and this is where, like, the grief settles on their shoulders. Like, there's nothing to hide now. It's been a bad day.
Grief will do that, whether you accept it or not. It'll crumble you. And then this is where we see it when they finally close. I think it's when the wife closes the door because the freaking neighbors are literally stalking them on the outside.
Oh, yes.
Trying to get, like, any info or images of their emotions. And so as soon as the wife closes the door, you see her just sob and break down.
Yeah.
And I think inside that's what starts happening for all of them. The grief just gets to be, and they finally start talking about it.
Yeah. And a lot of the conversation, I wrote a lot of notes about this. I mean, a big part of the conversation is that they're worried that their relationship won't withstand this trauma, this grief that's happening.
Are we going to lose each other now because of this too?
Right. That was that's a big part of their conversation. Mom starts wondering out loud, like, what was my role in this? Like, and I remember her saying something along the lines of, like, but he was just in his room. But then I'm sure so many other parents who have said the same thing. Right. And one thing that Dad said that I wrote, was like, it seems like Dad is trying to talk about how he was trying to break his own cycle of trauma and get it right with his kids. Right. But then he says, like, if my dad made me, how did I make that? And that, like, depersonalizing statement, like, calling Jamie that, like, that hit me like a ton of bricks, and it, like, him and his wife are just going back and forth about, like, where did we go wrong? Like, did we do this? What's our part in this? And I think,
if we can stay with that for a moment too.
Yeah.
I think that when he does that too, it feels like it's the separation that he has to create to start being honest about this. Of, like, to you and I, Jamie is just our son. And we could never imagine. Because to us, he would never be able and capable of.
Right.
But the reality is that he did do that. He did that action. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if that's what he was saying. Like, how did my role and how I impacted allow him to do that? And further, Jamie never says sorry for this shit. Jamie never says or shows any sign of feeling regret or remorse for the fact that he has taken this young girl's life. He's upset that he is getting in trouble and he's fearful of that.
Yeah.
But he never shows, oh, this was wrong of me to have done this.
Right.
And I wonder if that was like that father's moment of and mother's moment of asking, we thought we had this loving son. We thought we had a loving family. We thought this. Mm-hmm. How did that turn into that action?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. And you're right. I do feel like it's like him creating distance in his head to cope with it, right? Like, let me put him in this box over here. You're not my son, you're that.
Sometimes we have to in order to start grieving.
You do. And I think that, like, it feels like they let the lid off, like they take the lid off finally, and they're starting to, like, okay, express some things. And I think that, like, they're just so, I mean, grief, it's the grief. The grief is palpable. Yeah. You feel it. It's heavy in the room. It's heavy in the house. The house feels dark.
Oh, yeah.
Feels really dark.
Feels like a death.
Feels like a death. And I think I think the thing that I wrote down was the fact that, like, none of his family in this whole time has ever talked about the guilty plea. They don't say that they felt he was guilty or not guilty. Nope. But, you know, but Dad did say, like, once I saw the video, I was like, oh, right? And Mom didn't get to see the video.
Never.
So Dad is almost, like, kind of holding this responsibility, like this burden solo, because he knows within his heart of hearts Jamie did do it.
Rationally, he
rationally has proof that he did it,
but
right?
Emotionally, it hasn't caught up until
and man, I might cry talking about this episode. It's a heavy episode. They you know, the end shot just absolutely destroyed me.
That scene, I don't know if that was like planned or organic.
Oh my God. It was brutal. It was brutal. You know, he goes into Jamie's room. It's a child's room.
It's got space wallpaper, and the bedding is still planets and stars and stuff, and it's such a boy's room, and it almost looks like it's the dark blue. It's like this cozy small room.
Yeah.
And the scene is crushing. It made me think of how many parents have been in that spot, looking back on their child's childhood. Yeah. And then wondering, how did they get to this place and what was my role?
And it also reminded me of, like, what about the parents of the victims who let those rooms live in memoriam to those children? It was really, it was tough. It was a hard watch. You know, and he tucks the teddy bear in, and he just releases everything that he's been holding in.
That's why I had to give name to that actor, because I don't know his emotional state.
It felt real. It felt so real. You know, and again, like when you're doing this in one shot, and you have these very, like, tight, close, like, aspect ratios, like, you feel like you're in it, right? You're in the bedroom with him, and you feel the walls closing in, and you feel the grief and the sadness, and it was absolutely brutal. And I think, you know, I loved the series for so many reasons, because it showed grief. It felt like it showed grief in real time,
and especially about how it applies today. I think we're living in this world, and we're in a situation where we don't know the forest for the tree line. And this really highlighted what is the impact, perhaps, of social media, of having two different worlds where you can be online and so connected in some ways, and also so isolated about your real lived experience and others. And the magnitude that this is having on families when situations like this happen, because it happens all the time.
And the ripple effect of it all too, right? You get to see the relationship of how this act affected the detective and his son. You get to see how it affects the psychologist and her interactions in her workspace. And you get to see the kids around this group, you know, react and respond in real time. And I think it was very profound. I thought that it was a really good glimpse into kind of like what that might be like. I just really liked it. It was tough in good ways.
Yeah. How are you feeling as you come to an end of it? Because I know you got emotions coming up with it.
Yeah, I just really liked it.
Yeah. It was so good.
I liked it. I was just so moved by it. And, you know, I'm such an empathetic person.
Yeah.
To see it, and it felt so real. I think that that's what really got me. It felt so real. And there's just something so striking about I love working with kids. I work with kids. That's my favorite thing. When this stuff happens and it's children, it feels different.
Yeah.
It feels heavier. It feels different. It feels like there's more opportunities for something to have changed the outcome, right? Like when it's, at least for me, like when you hear of a crime and you hear of an adult committing like a heinous crime and taking a life, to me it feels like maybe there was more choice there, or maybe there was something else there. But like when it's a kid, you're like, but maybe we could have done something. They were only 13. At least that's where my mind goes, and I think that probably the family feels that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just what was missing.
Right? Like,
what did he need?
Even as you said that, I'm getting flashback, like, to be in that age. I mean, I made a lot of stupid, very impulsive, very angry, but never in my wildest dreams would I have. And so, as you said, what was missing? Because something innately made me know, like, that's a line you don't cross.
Yeah.
That's something. But for Jamie in that moment, when his emotions escalated to that, he went there, and it's like, what was missing that made that feel like that was even an option?
And we also don't have a history that I know of, like, that this is a pattern of behavior, right? Like, we don't have violent outbursts, although I think the school was saying he was having problems.
They were saying he was having, like, behavioral problems, but what also made it sound like status quo of what the school seemed like. It was a
shit show. Under-resourced, under-trained.
Kids just running around.
Yeah, right. They all just happen to be wearing fucking uniforms.
Yes.
So it gives some semblance of
chaos, like, in color-coded chaos. That's what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very, it's hard to wrap your head around because we don't have his background, you know, it's not like we know that he had, like, a conduct disorder, right? Because when you work with kids that have, like, some conduct type issues, there's a pattern. There's a lack of empathy. There's a lot of history of violence, and boundary crossing that, you know, unfortunately in adulthood, you really start fearing about what will happen with this person. You know, we don't get any of that from him. It just seems like he's like this boy that likes planets, and he, like, has a teddy bear in his room, and he was asleep. You know,
it's like he just didn't get the message of empathy.
It's gone. And empathy is a really hard skill to teach. It's something that I am asked to help teach a lot, and it's something that I struggle to help with, because I don't want to say it's innate, but it's hard to operationally define empathy
or put a value to it if you don't innately have one.
And also too, like, with empathy comes perspective taking. Like, to me, you have to have both of those things, right? Because if you can't understand perspective, then you can't begin to identify and imagine how that other person is having an experience and predict what they may or may not do, which is, like, perspective taking and empathy. So really hard skill to teach. And that's what concerns me about the youth. And again, it's not everybody. It's just, I've had a couple of experiences where I'm just like, oh, that's a little strange that you thought that was okay, right? Yeah. So I don't want to end the episode on that dire note. I was really impacted by the show, as I often am by many, many things, because I think and feel a lot. But
you're not alone in that. I mean, that's why
people are talking about it.
Everybody is talking about.
Yeah, I would love for, like, my mom. I wish my mom would watch it. I would love to get, like, a parent perspective of that, because I think it was very, like, you know, impactful in a therapeutic sense and psychological sense. But it would be really nice to hear, like, a parent perspective on that, right? So yeah, if you watched the series, if you made it this far, this is our longest episode by far. I don't know if we're gonna cut this in half or whatever, but you know, if you really enjoyed hearing our like, very detailed breakdown of this series, let us know. You know, review us if you can on, like, Spotify, Apple Music. It helps people find us. Share us, you know.
Yeah, comment if you have other show or movie suggestions.
Yeah, give us some recs. Yeah, we'd love that. We would love to do that, and you know that I'm going to take it too far, and you know I'm going to put my whole booty into it.
We're going to analyze it.
We going to analyze that shit. So that was it. We did it. We talked about Adolescence. I'm emotionally exhausted, and I'm going to need to eat some more sour belts.
Sour belts it is. All right, everybody be kind to one another. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Pay attention to one another.
Be nice to each other. Nice. Don't forget that there's always crisis resources available. If you're struggling with empathy or you need help, you can call or dial 988. It's a national suicide and crisis hotline.
And talk about the things. If as Esther Perel would say, if it's difficult to talk about, that's how you know you shouldn't be talking about it.
Period.